Hang on. Always my father, forever my friend.
Touching, when done right, is very powerful. It feels good. It's a great way of flirting and connecting with women, and most of all, it conveys that you are a socially attuned and confident man. What up, Casanova, and welcome to part 2 of a 3-part series on how to touch women in social settings, or how to be physically intimate in social settings. Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at 3 lower risk ways in which you can touch women when you're out. Now, in the first video, in part 1, I discussed the principles that you need to follow in order to navigate this area, this often described as a murky area by many men, navigate it with better ease to optimize your interactions with women and not to overstep any boundaries, not have her me too your ass. So if you haven't seen that video yet, go ahead and watch it before you get into this one. It'll help lay a really good foundation for you to work with. We'll give you kind of an overall structure that you can apply when you're out, and we'll just help you make a lot more sense of this video and of the different examples that we're going to be looking at. Let's do a quick refresher and just go over the principles that I've outlined in the last video. I'm not going to go in depth because you can go ahead and just watch that video, but I'm just going to go through the list for us to just keep that in mind as we look at the examples. So the first principle is assume permission, or give yourself permission to touch as a general point. The second thing is your assumed confidence or comfort, the ease with which you carry yourself and with which you initiate touch in social settings really matters and has an impact on how your touching is perceived. So that means how fluid or flowing you are as opposed to choppy, and whether your touch is comfortably felt. It's not too limp, for example, neither too aggressive either, but it's comfortably felt, okay? So that again conveys a certain level of confidence. The next thing is the frame that you set in the interactions, or the vibe that you convey, also really matters in shaping the girl's perception of how you're touching and how you're interacting overall. Number 4, as a general principle, you should initiate touching sooner than later and not wait too long to do it, because the more you wait, the weirder it gets. 5 is gauge the appropriate level of touch or physical intimacy for the situation. And the last point is attempt and adjust, meaning attempt to initiate touch in any shape or form, but then always adjust if necessary. So always be looking at, is the girl comfortable? Do I have to dial it back? And remember, touching, when done right, is very powerful. It feels good. It's a great way of flirting and connecting with women, and most of all, it conveys that you are a socially attuned and confident man.
Yo, quick announcement, my dude. Just want to briefly mention that over the last year, many guys have been asking me, how do you create chemistry with women? And this has sadly been exaggerated by the pandemic. That's right, I'm talking about that magic you see me create with the girls in my videos. So, I've decided to give away a super entertaining, uncut, infield bonus video showing exactly that. Just click on the link in the description below. By signing up, you're also joining the VIP list for our, wait for it, new course, Honest Chemistry, which will be released in the near future and will teach you everything to do with creating chemistry, from sexual tension to an amazing connection. This course has been more than a year in the making, and I'm really excited to release it. So be sure to click on the link in the description box or comment section below to get access to your bonus video and stay in the loop. All right, now let's get back into it.
And the more confident you become and the better you get at reading women and social situations in general, the more permission you're going to be able to give yourself to touch in increasingly intimate ways. Similarly, The more positive references that you gain with touching women in social settings, the more confidence you'll gain in the process in general. So with that in mind, let's look at these 3 lower risk ways in which you can touch women in social settings. Now note, you're going to notice a general gradual increase in the levels of physical intimacy as we move through the categories, as well as a gradual increase in the levels of assumed comfort and assumed permission, meaning how much permission and comfort you have to assume or how much permission you have to give yourself in order to pull any of these physically intimate acts off without weirding the girl out.
The Adidas shoes. Huh? The Adidas shoes. They remind me of like when I was 14, you know, in middle school. Everybody.
Is not good?
No, it's cool. It's like, I'm feeling nostalgic now, you know?
Okay.
Nostalgia's good. What's your name?
So the first category is something I like to call casual touching. And some examples of that are forms of greeting, be it a handshake or a quick hug, high fives or fist bumps in order to communicate approval.
The Adidas shoes. Huh? The Adidas shoes.
Although sometimes I also like to use a high five in some kind of a random goofy sense by just high-fiving a girl when I first initiate contact, when I first approach her, just kind of high-five her and say something random like, "You made it," or "You look very French." But otherwise, just a quick way of giving her some approval, like if she likes Nirvana, you give her a high five because you also like it. So pretty straightforward. Something else you can do is show her some kind of like a cool handshake that you know, as long as it's appropriate in the context and not too forced.
You say quantity?
Quantity. Or like this. Slide.
I've done this before.
Or touch her shoulder, and that can communicate a bunch of different things or can be used in a bunch of different contexts, like to get her attention, to make a certain point or emphasize a certain point, to reassure, or to compliment.
What would you like? I might have a beer. But you don't have to get what I'm getting. Be a leader, not a follower.
Now with casual touching, the assumed level of permission is very low. Okay, she doesn't really need to be that comfortable with you or even interested in you. It's just something people do in social settings. It's appropriate both in a low as well as in high stimulus environments, meaning you can do this when you meet a girl, you know, during the day, on the street, at the coffee shop, mall, whatever, or at night at bars, clubs, etc. Her general level of arousal can be very low for this to be well received. And lastly, the duration of this is typically brief. Okay, so don't let whatever it is that you're doing linger. Okay. Sure, if it's a handshake that requires, 3-4 seconds to demonstrate, fine. But if you're just shaking your hand, you don't want it to linger.
Wait. Hang on. Always my father, forever my friend. Tell me that's not some kind of a biblical quote.
No, it's not. It's for my dad.
Okay.
Yeah. No,
You guys look close?
I'm not religious at all.
Thank God. No pun intended.
Now, the next category on the spectrum is something I like to call the curious touch or the explorative touch. And that essentially means that you're giving yourself permission to explore something on her body or something she's wearing. So for example, if she has some cool earrings or a bracelet or a tattoo, you're essentially touching, and the reason is it's because you want to see the earring or because you want to see the bracelet or you want to rotate her arm so you could read what's on her tattoo. Okay, so it's a very valid reason to touch and is usually welcome.
I was just on my way to get a coffee or a smoothie, and you looked adorable.
Thank you.
With your hat and giant bag, so I decided to. Is that it?
It is a tattoo.
Basically.
Rockstar status.
You're a rock star. I'm almost a rock star.
Almost a rock star, not quite a rock star.
Now here again, the assumed level of permission is quite low, but just a bit higher than the casual touching. She doesn't need to be that comfortable or interested in you, but maybe a tad more so than in the last category. And this again is appropriate in both low and high stimulus environments, or even on dates. Yes, you can do this when you first meet a girl on the street, assuming she's receptive enough to your approach in the beginning. Her general level of arousal can be quite low for this to be welcome. And lastly, the duration of this should still be on the brief side. You don't want to overdo it, okay, by touching her ears or her earrings for like 10 seconds or playing around with her bracelet for 10 seconds. Okay, that's weird.
Wait, I met you earlier.
Yes, you did.
You are Armenian.
Yes, I am.
All right. Wait, Russian Armenian?
No, just Armenian.
Just Armenian? You speak it?
Yep.
I expect nothing less. What was your name again?
Ani.
Ani.
Yeah.
What's my name?
I don't remember. What's your name?
Vadim.
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 The one and only.
Vadim. Ani. Vadim. Okay, got that.
Vadim Ani. Ani. Vadim.
The next category is something I call semi-casual touching. And some examples of that are a sideways hug, or maybe kind of leaning on her shoulder like this, kind of like your buddies, or touching her upper back area, like just behind the shoulder, as you're leaning in to talk to her. For example, in like a loud venue, you're standing kind of side by side, you're touching the upper back shoulder area, and you're just talking into her ear.
I just got in. I'm flirting with the idea of getting a drink. Are you joining me for an adventure to the bar? As long as you promise not to be weird. Let's go.
And this, by the way, is a great way of assuming, a certain level of proximity and intimacy, but, without blocking her physically, which is what a lot of guys do in bars and clubs. So you're kind of standing on the side, you're not encroaching her space, but you're leaning in and out, within close proximity. And this again creates this like good level of intimacy without really crossing any boundaries. Like this is something that's normally socially acceptable.
You're pretty cool for a 31-year-old.
I'm pretty old for a 31-year-old.
I'm way too young for you.
Now here, the assumed level of permission, again, is a little bit higher. She doesn't need to be that interested in you per se, but does need to be somewhat comfortable around you, or at least partial to you. It is something certainly more appropriate for higher stimulus environments, such as a bar, or maybe when you're on a date, assuming you're of course positioned in a way where this feels organic or makes sense to do that. So this is not, again, something that you're just gonna randomly do when you meet a girl on the street or at the mall or at the bookstore. Unless, of course, some time has already passed and she's gotten very comfortable with you and you maybe took her on some kind of an instant date or whatever. Her general level of physical and emotional arousal is still on the lower end for this to be welcome, but perhaps a bit higher. And the duration can be a bit longer, maybe 5 seconds if you're doing some kind of like a sideways hug, okay, or if you're leaning on her. Now, semi-casual touching is great because it, one, assumes more comfort, and in so doing also creates more comfort between you and the girl. Having said that, of course, you need to calibrate and adjust if you make her feel uncomfortable or if you do it prematurely. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and comment below, as well as tune in later this week for part 3 of the series, where I'll be discussing 5 higher risk ways in which you can touch women when you're out. Don't forget also to sign up for our Honest Chemistry VIP list that you can get your free uncut in-field bonus video. Link in the description below or in the comments section. Thanks again, and until next time.